Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another virtual event with Calyptus. Thanks very much for joining us. If you don't know who we are Web3's gamified hiring platform, helping people all over the world find jobs in Web3 and supporting some of the very best in our industry with their hiring efforts. Today, we have a panel on building globally distributed teams in the Web3 space. We're here to explore the unique landscape of managing talent without borders, an approach that is redefining team dynamics in our industry and shaping how we collaborate across continents, cultures, and time zones. Our panelists are each leaders with hands-on experience in building and managing international teams, and we'll dive into some of the key advantages and challenges of this new model, from attracting and integrating talent across regions to balancing on-site expectations with remote flexibility. We'll discuss what makes distributed teams vital to Web3 and how they can empower businesses to innovate faster and more inclusively. We'll also touch on some other essential questions. How do we maintain a unified company culture across diverse geographies? What's the best way to offer fair compensation globally? And looking to the future, how will trends like AI and evolving regulations shape the management of borderless teams in Web3? So let's get started with introductions from our panelists who will each share a little bit about themselves, their role, their companies, and their experiences building these global teams. Leila, over to you.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Leila. I'm the head of people here at Ether.Fi. We're a liquid staking protocol branching into the payment space with a crypto native credit card. I'm based in Toronto, but I am currently calling in from Lisbon for a team offsite, speaking of, distributed teams and getting together.
Hey everyone, I'll jump in next. I'm Christian, head of talent at Biconomy. So Biconomy is powering sort of on-chain experiences, improving UX and building transaction infra for Web3 developers. I myself am based in Belfast, but Biconomy is headquartered in Dubai, and we're spread sort of remotely across the Europe, Middle East, and Asia. So yeah, looking forward to sort of diving into some of these topics today.
Yeah, hi all. I'm Alex. I run all of the ops at Aragon. Basically everything non-technical. Aragon is a DAO platform. Been around since 2016. Some of the big DAOs in the space are built on top of the Aragon tech stack. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Matej. I'm the director of operations at Parity. Parity is the devs company behind Polkadot. We are pretty much a global company. We have some bigger bases in Berlin, Lisbon, London, and in Switzerland as well now. I'm based in Berlin.
Fantastic. Thank you all very much for being here. Matej, to kick off, I believe that all of you actually have backgrounds in traditional tech before moving into Web3. Would you say that building a globally distributed team is more critical for Web3 projects compared to other industries?
Yeah, I think Web3 represents some unique challenges here. I think we can define multiple buckets. I could definitely name a few. I would just start with the first one, sourcing the right talent and finding engineers with a specific skill set. It's definitely challenging in Web3 space. Probably the second one, really explaining what we really do. Definitely challenging as well. Then building the right type of partnerships in the industry is probably more challenging and in a traditional tech. And then probably long term as well, how do we remain attractive in this space? Definitely something that I would like to point out as a challenge as well.
Yeah, I think there's certainly a lot of challenges that are unique to this space. I guess something that I have seen clearly over the last few years running Calyptus is that jobs are overwhelmingly remote. I think we put out a salary report every quarter. The 200 jobs last quarter, 82 or 83% of them were remote first roles, only 4% being in office. I know, Leila, that you have ideally like to bring people into the office. Do you have any learnings, any pros, cons of building a distributed team with at least some on-site expectations?
Yeah, and generally we do have pretty high on-site expectations. So we expect the team to, be in office like 3 to 4 times a week. It's definitely, not common in this space, and that can certainly pose challenges when you're looking to hire. When I'm sourcing, I put it out there right off the bat, just so no one's wasting any time if it's a total deal breaker. But that said, being on site is something we believe has kind of been like, not to be cliche, but like a superpower for us. It's allowed us to ship really, really quickly. It's allowed us to be really, really effective as a team. So from like a people perspective, it's more about the team effectiveness versus the individual. And so we have other things in place that give our teams flexibility. Like life happens. That's obviously one. But then in terms of like policies, we have remote work for 1 month of the year. And we also allow our team, and I think this is kind of unique to Web3, to work out of any of our other offices. So we operate in South Korea, Cayman Islands, Denver, and Toronto. So if people are kind of, more of a travel nomad mindset and they want to move around, that's totally fine with us. It's just more about being in person with the team and having a lot more of that like cross-functional collaboration and what you get from being in person. That's harder to do when you're remote.
I would just jump in there as well, Callum. So, like as we spoke about before, Biconomy is remote first as a company, but we do have an office in Dubai. Our founders are there. We have maybe another sort of 15 out of our 35 employees there as well. And we have seen those benefits that Leila mentions as well. So, we're well set up for remote work. We have great practices and rituals and all that to make remote work for us. But we've seen the flip side of the coin as well. So we've baked that into kind of how we work, and when we feel like it's maybe worthwhile getting a specific team that is remotely spread together in Dubai or maybe somewhere else, we can see the benefit in doing that, and we do it, and that's something that's worked very well for us amidst a remote first environment.
Yeah, I would maybe also like to add a couple of points to that, because this is also kind of the practice that we're following as well. I think everyone that is remote first sees the benefit of bringing people together as well. So I think we for sure are organizing one bigger, like we call it company retreat a year, where everyone gets together, gets to meet other people. But we're also giving opportunities for teams to organize their own on-sites multiple times a year. Which has been proven as very beneficial as well.
Yeah, just jumping in and adding a ton of in on top there from our side. It's like, I think a very important piece of our culture has been like that we're remote, but it's also been that we have in-person work. So we meet up once a quarter as a whole team in a different city. Normally somewhere remote where the team can like be fully focused together. So we do an intense week of work, so 4 weeks a year, and we really see a benefit from that. Each quarter, it's almost like a burst of energy for the whole team. Improve shipping. We normally hack on some issues during that week and try and push like products forward. So yeah, it's a massive value add whenever we meet up in person. But we also see the benefits of being remote as well, especially from a talent pool perspective. Like when we're hiring, finding great engineers is not hard. Finding great engineers who like fit the culture and understand what we're doing from a Web3 perspective can be challenging, especially when we're in such a global industry where, we're meant to be breaking down borders. So like we want to be able to hire from anywhere, but we also still want to get the benefits of, meeting up in person as well.
For sure. Yeah, you're all kind of echoing similar points there. There's a lot of benefits to remote work, but actually it's still great to be in person at least every now and again, and possibly more frequently. I guess like from my own experience running Calyptus as a remote first company over the last 3 years or so, I'm really interested to understand from each of you how you go about hiring talent from different geographies and regions. And once you've made that hire, how do you make sure that your new employee feels included and integrated into the team from day one? Alex, perhaps we'll kick off with you.
Yeah, so I mean, hiring globally is hard. We use great partners, number one, to help us out, like Calyptus to start with. But yeah, hiring, obviously the process is different. You don't get that face-to-face time in person when you're hiring. So, we try and address that during the hiring process. Multiple interviews, tech challenges. We normally get a pretty good feel for people through that process. And then really it's once people start getting onboarded. So number one, we make sure that we have like a very strong onboarding for the first few weeks, multiple check-ins. We have point of contact within the team, so almost like a buddy system. Make sure they're like integrated from day one. Have the impact of someone not being on a tool in a remote first org is huge. So we have a really strong process around that, making sure people are like up to speed as soon as possible. They get the company culture as early as possible. But I suppose again for us, it's having those offsites. They're never more than, when someone starts, they're never more than a couple of months away from meeting everyone. And normally it's shorter. So, they're maybe a month away from meeting the full team, which makes a massive difference. So, they normally get involved from a culture perspective very early on. And then the final thing is, making people feel like welcome. So, that like something small like our welcome pack when people join the company, so they, have some Aragon swag from the get-go, I think is important. It makes people feel welcome from day one, especially when they can't see you in person. It's something we worked very hard at over like the last 18 months, and I think it's been pretty effective.
What's in the welcome pack, Alex?
Different thing. Well, normally just Aragon swag. It's not extensive, but it's just making sure that people have something tangible, Aragon related on day one, which I think makes a big difference.
For sure. And I think you're right, like having a really strong onboarding process that's kind of laid out, process driven, involves meeting with multiple team members across the organization, really early doors, helps with that. I don't know whether anyone else had anything to add possibly there.
Yeah, I think one thing that is super important in a remote first working environment is documentation. So I think we really, like, documentation is hard. You really need to dedicate a lot of time to get it right, to include every single little thing that is important. But once you do it right, it really makes a difference. It really helps people to do a lot of work on their own, and most of the time they are kind of left to their device and going through the process. You can guide them, you can support them remotely as much as you can, but in the end, experience is definitely different in comparison to having someone right next to you. So documentation is definitely a big priority, I think.
Yeah, and to add, especially on the onboarding side, I think that's huge. I actually wanted to be a teacher my whole life. So onboarding, documentation, that's very near and dear to me. One thing that we've done that's worked pretty well, when possible, we'll fly the new employee to Cayman, which is where like most of our team is, our headquarters. And so even if they're not at that main office, or maybe they're starting remotely before they can move or relocate to whichever office they're going to be in, they can at least spend like 1 to 3 weeks, with the team in person, and it makes that onboarding experience that much more warm, but also so much more effective for everyone. So that's worked really well when, you know, when the stars align and the calendars work. Or even like we've done, like we have a couple new hires that are going to meet up with our team at DevCon, for example. So like at a conference, if it's close to where they're living, you know, there's opportunistic ways that you can look at it and still be kind of scrappy, and have fun with getting the newbies together with the team.
Yeah, I'd echo all the points on the onboarding, so not to labour those too much, but something that was done with me and we've done with hires since I joined Biconomy 2 years ago is we do like a really detailed run through with the new hire of what their 30, 60, 90-day plan is. I think most people, when they hear 30, 60, 90, they want to just sort of curl up inside. It's not the most attractive thought, but actually for me, when I joined my role, I found it really helpful. It gave me a great vision as to what my first 3 months in the role were going to look like. It was great to get that sort of face time with, you know, whoever the relevant people in the business were, to talk through what's important for this role, how are we going to get there. And then you had something to work towards. So when that natural onboarding period where you're getting lots of face time with lots of people maybe phases out a little bit, you know exactly what your focus is. And so we've been really intent on baking that into our onboarding process as well, and it's worked very well.
Yeah, absolutely. Setting pretty clear expectations, particularly in a remote team, very important. I'd agree. So we've spoken a little bit about then, you know, how to make employees feel integrated early on. I think that brings us quite nicely to talking about culture and productivity. Christian, again, how do you manage culture, productivity across multiple time zones, across cultural backgrounds? And do you have specific practices that you use or tools that you use that have been key to finding some sort of success there?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is it is hard, and I don't think there's any sort of one magic ingredient. Um, what's worked for us is we find that while we're remote first, we do need considerable overlap across everybody in the business. So not just within one team, but actually all teams, because there's so much cross-functional work that goes on. So what that means for us is we'll hire in Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. And anywhere in between there, but not either side, which means that yes, you know, the async practices need to be there. So for example, we've made sure that all important information, you know, on Slack is not in private groups. We did a full sort of cleanse to make sure everything is kind of visible, and stuff that needs to be documented is documented, you know, somewhere more formally. I think a lot of teams are just using Notion, like a lot of companies. But also, so while all those async practices are great and make a lot of sense, we also realized, especially in Web3 where things move so quickly, it's important to have that opportunity to have face time together on meetings, to, you know, strategize, to do, you know, product discovery, whatever it is. How that plays out in each team, we haven't set down a gauntlet as to you need to do it this way. We delegate that to the leaders of each team as to what that means for them. Some leads in our company meet with the folks in their team daily on a call. Other people it's maybe weekly. But you know, for us, it's important that that time is there, and how that plays out can depend team by team.
Yeah, on the interesting point around the time zones and having teams. So we do something similar. We don't limit where people work, but we do have core working hours. So we have like a set of CET core working hours where we expect people to be online for like 5 hours, where everyone overlaps at the same time. And then obviously people can work however they want, wherever they want in the world, as long as they're online in those hours. And that made a huge difference to us. And then the only other thing I would add to that is we have like very clear ceremonies. So, you know, we have like a very clear like monthly structure, weekly structure, like quarterly structure. So people know when, you know, sprint reviews are. So we have the whole company in every sprint review, things like that. So there's like clear like company ceremonies, which people can sort of get into the flow with the working hours, making sure they overlap. So yeah, that's how we manage that.
Yeah, I would just like to add a couple of points regarding the tools. I think nowadays we are so advanced with all the calendars and everything that we're using that we really can define when we are available, when we're not available, and that works quite great. But we really want to promote the autonomy among the entire workforce so they can choose where they work from and when they work. I think also then we have a lot of these project management tools, like developers depend on GitHub a lot. Like on the non-devs part of the business, we depend on Asana a lot, where basically it's all about the collaboration. So you don't necessarily have to respond the next minute, but you will at some point. So you allow work to progress even if people are not on the same time zone.
Yeah, there's one thing we've done or that I'm pushing for. It's slowly happening because, you know, our team is working at all different hours and all hours of the night sometimes, depending on what's going on. And so I've encouraged the team to, you know, if they're reaching out to someone at a really odd time, to just like say not urgent at the beginning of the message or super urgent, I need you. And then that expectation is set. And that really helps build the culture as well, because it can be hard when your team is distributed globally. Like you can be getting messages at all hours of the night, and there can feel like there's, you know, that expectation to reply all the time. You know, we're in a pretty intense industry where, you know, crypto doesn't sleep. But we have to sometimes, right? So knowing what's urgent and what's not, and that expectation from your team, especially as a whole, as a company, when everyone's doing that, can work really, really well and just help them also even just prioritize the messages and requests that they're getting.
I think one thing that also has kind of became a part of our culture is also to always add to the chat tool that we're using, what is your current status? So there you have a lot of OOOs and away from keyboards and away from keyboard until this certain time, or working from a different time zone. I think this is kind of a part of our culture now.
Just a small thing, but something that we've done when you're talking about productivity that's worked really well. I know loads of companies do this, but we have a no meeting day. So it's, you know, like if something urgent comes in, you know, put it in. But I just thought I'd call out that's something that's worked really well for us, especially for the engineering teams. You know, they know that I'm not going to put interviews in their diary, basically. And people really like that and know that they have that time to focus and get on with their deep work.
Cool. Yeah, I think some really interesting points there. I've kind of figured out all of my team's location now, so I'll even schedule messages on Slack if I know I'm messaging them at ridiculous o'clock. For me, even if someone says not urgent, but I happen to see it, I can't help myself but reply. Cool. A tough question next. Leila, perhaps you can kick us off. I think compensation is a really, really interesting topic in this space, particularly what do you guys do at Ether.Fi to ensure fair compensation and benefits across different regions?
Yeah, this is a big one. This is actually what consumed me for the first, I don't know, 2-3 weeks of my time here. And I was new to Web3 as well. So also building out like token grants and diving deep into that was a whole other can of worms. But I guess just to keep it simple with like the base salary and general compensation, we pull a ton of market data using various tools, talking to our investors, talking to our networks, and then compiling all of that together to get a good benchmark for each role that we hire for or for new roles that we open. And then we're able to build off of that benchmark the various levels so that every job profile, it's not just, okay, a senior engineer, here's our band. It's like, okay, software engineering, here's our entire like map of compensation bands from intern to like principal and everything in between with the lower end of the band, the upper end of the band, and the bonuses that also come with that. So we do this for every role. I use like a formula-based model just to keep things as simple as possible for myself. Once we have that benchmark, essentially everything else gets filled in. So yeah, that has worked really, really well. And then from there, we thought about, okay, what percentage of someone's salary should be in the form of tokens? And then we map that out from that as well, so that all the ratios and everything kind of make sense. And each different region has a different benchmark, give or take. But that said, we play around with those benchmarks to make sure that there's no major discrepancies across places. So for example, if we were to start hiring in a much lower cost of living place, we would take that into consideration, but also make sure it's not, colossally different from, our US or Cayman salaries. So there's a little bit of human, I guess, in the loop there, but a lot of it is very objective and based on the market. And then the last thing I would add there is, for example, I'm in Canada, in Toronto. If I were to move to Cayman, I would then actually get an adjustment based on that market there. And similarly, if someone moved from Cayman to Canada, they would also have an adjustment based on that market. So yeah, we follow this, but then also make sure that we are looking at each case on a like one-to-one basis and using our human nature as well.
Sounds like you spent a lot of time coming up with that.
Yeah, that was a lot.
But once it's done, it's done, and you can use it forevermore. What sort of tools do you use, Leila, to benchmark? Are you using data from kind of traditional tech and then adding some sort of multiplier for Web3? How does that work?
Yeah, so generally, like not all of our engineering roles require, Web3 experience. So, looking at like your standard backend engineer, let's say, we would follow regular market data, could grab that from like Pave is a tool that I've used, or like Levels data FYI, lots of different options there. Specifically for Web3 roles, we would add like kind of a nicheness bump to the benchmark. And then again, like the whole formula kind of builds out the rest. But there would be other roles that are also non-crypto that would apply to that, like a security focused engineer or a DevOps person, maybe mobile, depending. So it's not necessarily just those crypto roles that would get that treatment. And then early in a search, in talking to candidates, I would use, what their expectations are to adjust our numbers. So if it feels like we're totally off base, I can talk to like 5 or 10 people and get a really good sense and validation in what we were thinking.
Cool. That's really helpful. Thank you. Guys, if I'm not mistaken, and perhaps Aragon might be the exception here, but you all have a token attached to the business in some way, shape, or form. How much do you, how do you think about kind of token compensation in this space? And I'm particularly interested to get an idea of how you think about the volatility of any token in this space, and how do you make the decision that someone's going to get X amount of tokens, or is it X amount of USD value? I'm not sure if someone wants to jump in.
Yeah, I can jump in there. So yeah, we offer token on top of base salary for every role that we offer. One way we would differ to Leila's situation is that more or less everybody we hire, because of what we're doing, we tend to hire people from the Web3 industry. So we love it when somebody's in the process that is really bullish on our project, on Web3 in general. So for us, giving people that skin in the game is, a really large part of offers. We completely understand, of course, people need, proper compensation, base salaries, whatever. But, given that token component really gives people that motivation, for the project. So yeah, we make sure that we make this clear to people early on in the process that this will be part of it. And then we have sort of standard ways as to how we sort of ratio that out. sometimes you come across people that are really bullish on it and almost prefer crypto over fiat. Obviously, that's rare, but in those cases, we're happy to make those alliances as well. So, it's an important part of our packages, and we try and tailor that when we can as well.
We approach this similar but a little bit different. So as well, every team member gets a part of the compensation also in token, but it's more on the performance base. So basically, it's paid out as a performance bonus.
We do both. We do the performance bonus and the token grants. And to the question on if it's based on the value or the number of tokens, that first couple of weeks there, I went back and forth on this many times. It kept me up at night at times too, but ultimately we landed on the number of tokens being that benchmark, mainly because of the volatility. So we don't want someone joining, 6 weeks apart from someone else in a very similar role and have like drastically different packages. Because all in all, like over time, we do want that to be as uniform as it can be. And there's ways that we can adjust that too. There can be refreshes and things like that, but that's ultimately where we landed and where we felt it was the simplest for now.
Cool. Oh, Christian, you
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry. Exactly the same as Leila. For us, it was number of tokens for the same reason. Fairly standard vesting. They're frozen for year 1 and then they vest over years 2, 3, and 4. There's opportunities to earn extra tokens as a performance bonus as well. So definitely a key part of the package.
Cool. Pretty uniform across the board. And to your point, Christian, must be great when you get someone that wants minimal base and just lots of tokens. They're gonna work hard for sure. That's cool. This topic has kind of half come up already, but the space that we're in, it evolves so rapidly. Any particular tips and tricks or anything that you've seen work really well on attracting and retaining top talent in globally distributed teams? Going to throw it out to the crowd. Is anyone going to come off mute?
I think it probably comes back. Like I don't know what our average tenure is. I think we're doing pretty well, and our turnover has like dropped a lot over the last few years. We're getting up into like we've got multiple people now who are sort of plus 3 years at Aragon now, which is great for a Web3 org. I think the number one, having a product that people can get behind and they really believe in and they can see it driving forwards is huge. Like that's the biggest thing. Really like something that's going to get them up every day, especially being remote, on those days where they're not coming to the office to get motivation from other people. But then again, like probably going back to that in-person thing, when people know each other and it feels a bit more like a family, that probably drives people on a bit as well. So that's been big. And then also giving people like flexibility, when life happens, make sure that keep people on board. We work on Web3, a lot of people are contractors. So having that sort of flexibility, make sure it keeps people on, from a retention perspective.
Yeah, I would just add that the fact that so many companies are remote first in Web3 is actually something that is making us very competitive. I think a lot of people, especially developers, prefer that kind of working, or like at least have this option to choose how they can work and where they can work from. I think this is making the entire industry very, very competitive, and it might be making some Web2 developers moving to Web3 because of that. My personal opinion, but hopefully there's some data behind it that can support this as well.
Something I've noticed in Web3 as well, more so than any other industry, in my opinion, is that people genuinely are mission driven. So I know everybody when they interviews for a company says they're motivated by the mission of the company, but I think in Web3 it genuinely is true when you're hiring from that Web3 talent pool, because generally, candidates are motivated by the thoughts of, decentralization and moving towards that. So, whenever you're trying to attract and retain talent, it's all about us communicating well. What are we contributing to the space? What's our vision? What are we trying to do? If you hire people that are motivated by that vision, then that's great, and that genuinely does play into your hands when it comes to negotiating offers and things. And then equally, when it comes to retaining those people, it's about keeping the communication channels open. Are we still working towards that vision that we've always talked about? What are you contributing to it? How are we going to make it better? And giving those employees autonomy and a say in how we get there as well. I think there are things we find to be really important at Biconomy for attraction and retention.
Yeah, we've launched our first pulse survey about 3 months ago, and we've now done it twice. It's kind of quarterly. And when you have a really new team that's like, yeah, everyone's like a year plus in, like our team was only founded about 2 years ago. Obviously everyone's going to be pretty engaged. Retention's very strong when you're growing and when you're new, but the pulse survey definitely serves as a really good avenue for gathering feedback and understanding where people are at, where we can improve, and doing things like stay interviews before someone leaves, meeting with them like on some regular cadence to just get a sense of like candid feedback, how they're doing, and really making sure that the managers are leaning in there on their one-on-ones and seeing what each individual values. I think, like Christian said, most people in the space are going to be really mission and vision driven, but everyone's going to have kind of a different pie chart on the different factors that motivate them, whether it's compensation or flexibility or remote or on-site. Believe it or not, there's some people that prefer on-site. It's a smaller chunk of the pie, but they do exist. Yeah, all those different factors. And so there's a lot of differentiation that has to happen when looking at each individual, and then looking at your own company and like what your strengths are, because that's going to be different across the board too. So yeah, kind of back to the teacher hat, but treating every student differently based on how they learn.
Thank you. And final question from my side. As we're looking forward over the next, 5-10 years, how do you guys see trends like AI, even regulatory changes, and shifts, I suppose, around remote work impacting the management of teams in Web3? Any particular trends that you would highlight?
Yeah, I would definitely start with AI. It's something that we see this being implemented across the entire tool set. Like every tool that we're using, it'll be Notion, Asana, like the ATS, everyone is slowly introducing AI to the tool set, which can be beneficial to some extent. I do think that we're not entirely there yet. I think there's some certain areas where this will be super massively beneficial, recruiting being one of them. Like if AI ever gets to the point that will help our recruiters screen through the pack of 200-300 applicants quicker, being non-biased and really provide good work, I think this is going to help productivity in the recruiting business a lot. But I think we just need to wait and see where we go with this. And then on the part of like regulatory changes, like this is a super important topic for our industry, and this is something that will can either speed up development in certain areas of the world or like slow it down significantly. But we can influence it as much as we can, but in the end, it's also to some extent out of our hands.
Yeah, I would probably say on the AI front, I think the AI will certainly boost productivity. I don't think it's probably going to be a tool that helps people fulfill their roles at a much higher potential. What I would say, interesting from the recruiting, speeding it up, I was thinking of it from the other side, from an AI perspective, of making it actually more challenging, and already seeing it. Cover letters, CVs, ChatGPT driven. We've had multiple interviews now with bad actors who are like using ChatGPT in interviews to answer questions. We're not far away from probably having AI people on those calls answering answers that I'm asking from an AI perspective, and they'll sound great, and it would be hard to know if this is a real person for a remote first organization. So maybe we'll be moving more back to those in-person interviews. But I see that as being like maybe a challenge going forwards, especially from like a talent perspective for remote teams.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we all know AI has incredible potential to make us more productive. We've made that point, and it absolutely does. But I think in the people and talent space, we need to be careful that we don't get too obsessed with that, because if you think about everything we've just talked about today, a lot of the sort of value that we bring as a function, it's been emphasized that it's actually the human touch, and it's when we talk about onboarding and making people feel comfortable and bringing people from different cultures and diverse groups, all that sort of stuff. You lose a lot of that value as a function if you're just automating everything. So I think over the next period, the key is going to be evaluating where do we use it and where do we not use it, and then finding that balance.
Yeah, I think that there's times where it saves me a lot of time, like building out a rubric. If I know exactly what I want it, to look like, it's not a good end product necessarily, but it's a really, really good starting point that I can then share with, my people managers and say, okay, how does this look, from a competency standpoint for the role? And oftentimes it's pretty good. It just needs, a couple of tweaks based on their team and our company and everything like that. When that type of work, building out like a full chart of every level and all the different competencies, would have taken hours and hours and hours of collaborative work with the team. So there's certain things where it can save you a lot of time, and certain things that, yeah, it's not a robot's job, right? It's our job to have that human touch and element. I certainly am apprehensive towards like the recruiter AI bots that can like screen candidates. I think so much of what a great recruiter can do is like connecting with people, and joking around and making it an actually enjoyable conversation versus a transactional one. So yeah, I think there's a time and place, but when it works, it can certainly save a ton of time. And that's coming from a team of one. So that's very valuable to me.
I'm sure you need it. Yeah, I think I completely agree. I think there's a lot of benefit that can come from using tools like AI, but it still can't be trusted to do relatively simple things, right? So letting it loose, doing all your sourcing for you is probably a bit of a dangerous game right now. From a Calyptus perspective, we're definitely exploring all sorts of avenues on how we can use AI to better kind of match candidates with roles. It's not so much helping you find the perfect candidate immediately, but if we have extra information on assessments that they've completed on the platform, or they've verified their experience at X and Y past employers, then we can start to match them more effectively with roles that are looking for that skill set or that particular background, for example. So I think there's definitely ways that it will be used, and it will be very helpful, but we've just got to be a bit careful about going overboard too soon. Brilliant. Well, thank you all so much. I'm wondering if we have any questions coming in from LinkedIn or Twitter. So we'll just hang about for a moment. One for Leila. Do you think AI might reduce productivity when using it?
Yeah, it's actually funny. I think that question came about 20 minutes ago and maybe covered some of that. I think it depends on, how it's used, really. It can maybe give you more work at times, and at others can really save you a lot of time. So just being strategic about what you use it for.
Yeah, I'd agree. We slightly touched on this too. Talking about tokens and when they're not performing well, is that a time, and I think you all said you kind of base it on number of tokens. If the token were to fall a considerable amount, is that when you start considering kind of topping people up? Do you perhaps tie that again into performance? A lot of you said that performance was really important there. Yeah, what have you seen previously?
Yeah, for us, it's tied into performance, like we mentioned. So there's opportunities there, on a regular basis to get them topped up. We also do just general compensation reviews of both base salary and tokens. So if there's a major fluctuation one way or the other, we can look at that. But I think the best way to have a level playing ground, like we said, is just number of tokens, and it helps sort of handle a lot of these topics, in good times and bad.
Mm-hmm. At least it's fair across the board.
Yeah, I think it's also just part of the reality of it. And you can even look at public companies in the same way with RSUs and the stock price going up and down. Like, that's also just going to happen. And that's part of how it goes. So.
Brilliant. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. I really enjoyed that. And thank you everyone else for tuning in. Have a great rest of your days.